Good American Family showrunners unpack final episode of Natalia Grace drama and discuss the power in reckoning with unconscious bias. Very human and necessary. In the finale of Hulu's Good American Family, Natalia Grace's hopes that the justice system might finally prevail are squandered when the court of law becomes yet another place where her truth is not welcome. Michael Barnett, Mark Duplass, is acquitted on all charges of child abuse, mainly because no one, including the multiple experts who examined Natalia shortly before and after she was abandoned by the Barnetts, are even allowed to refer to her as a child at all. She's merely a person who was born in 1989, and therefore the statute of limitations on such abuse exclude much of her time with the Barnetts and therefore making any evidence from that time, including some pretty damning Facebook messages, inadmissible. But, as frustrated as viewers might be, showrunners Katie Robbins and Sarah Sutherland also hope that the finale of the limited series will prompt some introspection, as it did for them when they were crafting the story. You have to be able to get very vulnerable to get to the heart of a thing. As collaborators, a thing Katie and I were able to do, that is really rare, is to be able to see each other's fallacies and talk about them gently, but without sort of complete fear of offending, Sutherland said. There is a way to do that, and I know that there's a way to do that, because I feel like we were able to do that with each other in the creative process. In the interview below, Robbins and Sutherland took a deep dive with Deadline into the final episode, explaining where the show leaves each of its main characters and how admitting wrongdoing can be a powerful, necessary step toward healing. It's twofold. One is that the story just continues. So, as with any kind of story based on real events, you do have to pick a place to end it. But I think even more than that, this chapter of this story is so focused on something that I think maybe we touched on the last time we were talking, which is this idea that, in a show that deals with some tropes of horror, like these moments of a girl at the foot of a bed with a knife and poison, in a show that flirts with the horror genre, the thing that is the scariest, and that we really want to leave our audience with is that this is a case that actually had some empirical facts. The empirical facts around Natalia is genetic age, and that, at the end of the day, did not matter in the court of law, is something that is terrifying and should concern us all in terms of our justice system. So the place where we ended, having that land so fully on Natalia and the people who care about her, felt like the way to drive that home in the most impactful way. We agreed that it is very frustrating, and it was part of the challenge of writing, how to land the story without making something up that's not true. The real question we all want to know is, why did this happen? We're never going to get a clear-cut answer for that, but I do think, in the end, one answer that feels really clear is that this would have never happened if it had not been for Natalia's disability. We talked a lot about wanting to really land the role of bias here, both from the Barnetts, but also the system and the press and most of us watching, also, who like the people interacting with the news of it in the beginning, we are, together, guilty of, at some point, believing that Natalia was an adult in a way that never would have been believed if it had not been for her disability and her otherness. After the trials, in 2024, Natalia was issued a U.S. passport as confirmed her age. That was an empirical fact. She was a child. That was an empirical fact before the trials took place, but because of the fact that the Barnetts had re-aged her, she was not able to be treated as a child in court. I just think it's really fascinating, just how devastating it was, not only that they couldn't bring up the fact that she was a child, but because she was legally an adult. There were statute of limitations on what time period they could even be looking at the crime. The time period was specifically after she had already moved in with the Manses. So legally, the mission for finding justice was so incredibly impossible in this way that feels completely baffling when you look at the facts. But yeah, that's a very meandering way to say. I think keeping that in mind as we're trying to figure out which things to include, and which things not to, and which parts to speed up and not. There's a ton of story wrapped up in episodes 7 and 8, but we wanted to really land that notion that at the end of the day, this would never have happened had it not been for Natalia's disability, and for the kind of intense discrimination that is true for people with disabilities in this country.